My name is Kate. I'm the Programme Manager for the Diploma and the Bachelor of Business Studies. So if you do the programme, you probably have a lot of interaction with me as I manage the day-to-day running of the programme itself. And then I also teach on the programme in your first year. So we get to know each other pretty well within that first year. So the programme it's designed for students who have no previous undergraduate qualification. Majority of our students are working full-time. And then we have some students who are working part-time, but it's really aimed at students who are working, but who wish to undertake a qualification. It's structured in two parts. You have the diploma component, which is 2 years part-time, and then you have the degree component, which is also over 2 years. In terms of entry, so there is a minimum age for entry to the programme, so you must be 21 years of age. And for anyone who wishes to start in September 2021, so the minimum age, you would need to have turned 21 by the 1st of January, just gone. And there are two routes of entry. If you're under the age of 23, then you would enter via the matriculation route, which is your school leaving certificate results or your equivalent if you didn't do an Irish leaving certificate. And you can see the specifics of that on our webpage for what exact grades are required. If you're 23 or over, then you would enter via what's called the mature route. So primarily that's based on your work experience. If English is not your first language, you do need to provide evidence of English proficiency, usually through one of the English tests that are listed on UCD's English language website. And those have to be done within the last 2 years, so they do have to be current. In terms of fees, so the programme, there's an annual fee. So for 2021, 2022, which is when you guys would be looking, the fees are 3,300 per year, which is the EU fee. Then the non-EU fee is 6,600 per year. That fee doesn't include books, so books would be additional, but it covers everything else on the programme. And we do recommend the students to buy the books that you're given in the book list. There's a lot of material available online as well, and you get a lot of material through the virtual learning platform that we use. So as I mentioned, the programme is really in two parts. So you've got the diploma component, which is your first 2 years of the programme. That's at level 7 on the Irish National Qualifications Framework. At the end of those 2 years, you get your diploma award, and that's either at a pass, a merit, or a distinction, depending on your final grades. And that classification is based only on what you do in years 1 and 2. When you complete the diploma, majority of our students tend to move on to do the degree, but not all do. And so it's optional. If you wish to go on to do the degree, you do. There's no minimum GPA required to move to do the degree. You just have to have completed the 60 credits that are part of year 1 and 2. And then you go on to do the degree component, which is your level 8 on the National Framework of Qualifications, which means it's an honours bachelor degree. So when you complete that degree, you'll have a classification, either a pass, first class honours, second class honours, and again awarded to you through UCD. Normally we would have had graduation ceremonies at each stage after each award, and hopefully we'll be able to go back to that in the next year or so. So the programme is delivered over weekends, full day Friday and full day Saturday. And your year is divided up into two parts, your autumn term and your spring term. So your autumn term will run from September until December. And you'll have 3 weekends to attend the university for your classes. So one in September, one in October, and one in November. If you have exams, those exams will take place in December. And for our first years, we always have an additional weekend at the very start of September for orientation, where we would do two mornings, either online or face-to-face, and that will depend on the restrictions that are in place now come September 2021. And then your spring term then begins in January. So you are with us 1 weekend in January, 1 weekend in March, 1 weekend in April. And then if you have any exams, they will take place in May. And then that's it. You're finished then again until the following September. And we do advise that students do take that time off over the summer, because it is quite intense over that academic year. So it's important to make sure you give yourself a bit of time out as well over the summer. We find some students are anxious to keep going with the work, but you do need to take that bit of time out. So in terms of what you will do on the programme, so in year 1 and 2, it's really the foundations of business and getting to grips with the main subject matter that you'll be encountering. So in your first year, you're going to cover subjects like management, future of work and organizations, which is really around organizational behavior. So looking at things like leadership, motivation in the workplace. You will do 2 academic competencies modules, which are return to learning modules. So they're modules specifically designed for students who would have no previous academic qualifications, or students who have been out of education for an extended period of time. So they're really to help you to understand sort of writing conventions, referencing conventions, how do you go about putting together an essay, all of those things that either you haven't done in a while or you've never done before. And so I'm the one who teaches you on those modules. So we have the skills for higher education module, and then you have your academic development and transferable skills modules. So we do one in each term, one in your autumn term and one in your spring term. You also do marketing in year 1 and accounting. So then in year 2, you go on and do people management, which that's your first introduction to human resource management. Business environment, which is, I suppose, related to the management module that you do in year 1, and a little bit of entrepreneurship in the sense that you're kind of coming up with an idea and looking at the market to see how that idea might be able to be operationalized. You've got digital business and social media strategy, which is the module that Matt teaches on, and we'll talk to him a little bit about that. Business economics, so your introduction to economics, an introduction to finance and business law. And once you do all of those, then that's your diploma completed. So really a good grounding in many of the disciplines that make up business. And then in years 3 and 4, if you do decide to progress to the degree, then it's building on what you've done in years 1 and 2, and probably just going into a little bit more detail, a little bit more challenging, and I guess getting you to apply more critical thinking skills to the modules. So you have human resource management in year 3, which builds on the people management module that you did in year 2, but it's much more strategic now. So it's thinking about how do you, now that you understand the way HR works in an organization, how can you now use that to best effect? So how can you be strategic about the way you use your resources? And it's getting you to apply yourself much more in terms of the assessments that you would do. You've got project management, supply chain management and sustainability. You've got management practice, which is a research module. So you'll undertake a small piece of research in that term, and it's really just to get you used to the research process, because in year 4 you have a business research project module, which is a year-long module where you will undertake a small piece of research in your organization. So to be able to get you up and running straight away in year 4, we do the smaller scale research project in year 3, and that can be on a topic of your choosing. Generally, you're limited to the discipline areas of HR or change management, which are very broad in any case. And then in year 4, the business research project, you can do anything that you've covered over the 4 years of the program. So if you particularly liked marketing, you could go and do a project in that particular area. You also do strategic decision making in the digital world. Again, probably something Matt would be able to expand on a little bit also. And then you have an option module. So you have a choice of 2 modules for your final module in year 3. And the choice is between global business and intercultural skills or accounting information for managers. So if you really quite enjoyed the accounting that you did in year 1, you could go on and build on that in year 3. Or if it wasn't for you, then obviously you might do the global business module instead. Then in year 4, as I mentioned, you have your project, your research project that takes the full year. Then you also have a business and social enterprise module, enterprise and innovation, which is mostly related to entrepreneurship. And then again, you have a choice of 2 modules, financial management or managing people in multinationals. So quite a broad spectrum there in terms of the subject coverage that you will have. Ultimately, it's a general business degree, so it's going to give you a very broad understanding of business. And what a lot of students find is that they then tend to go on either in masters or PhDs to specialize in one of the areas that they have enjoyed. But I suppose it allows you to have, really good idea of business in general. The program is structured in a way that it has been specifically designed for students who are working. So the idea is that you will do a lot of preparation and a lot of reading and work on your own. And then you come to campus for these quite intensive weekends where you have your lectures and you have your sessions. At the minute, everything's operating online, but it's in the same format. So we operate still on a Friday and a Saturday for your online classes. And we are still not clear in terms of what will be happening in September. Our goal is that we will go back to the face-to-face element because that suits our students much better. So you are given support for the work that you will be doing at home. So we give you guided readings. We outline each week the type of reading that you should be doing, and your lecturers will do that for each module. So they'll say, you know, each week you should be reading these chapters in the textbook, and they'll upload stuff to our virtual learning environment as well that you will be accessing. And that will be the main sort of way that you'll be in contact with us, is through the virtual learning environment. You'll submit all of your assignments through that as well, and you'll download a lot of content from there. You also have what's called a program manager, which is me. So I'm there both as a support and an administrative perspective. So how, you know, you get up and running in UCD, you know, how you access all of the different systems, but also from an academic side. So I would be teaching you in those 2 modules that you do in year 1, and tend to provide a support for students throughout the 4 years of the program. You have those 2 study skills modules that are really about getting you up and running on the program. So for students who are nervous about coming into university, you know, those are really to help you settle in and to get to grips with assignments. And then we also facilitate study groups. So we will put you all into study groups at the start of the year. And then you choose to manage those as you wish. Some students will stay in them, some students will fall out of them. They're really good support to have, just to develop a community around yourself. And what our students find is that, you know, you do make friends for life in the program as you go through the 4 years. There's a range of teaching methods on the program. You'll have a range of different assessment as well that you'll encounter, from simulations. Matt does simulations in his modules. You'll have group work and individual work to do, particularly in group work in years 2, 3, and 4. We limit it in year 1 because you're still getting to know each other. You'll have to do things like presentations, and also, you know, you generally, most of your sessions will take place through lectures, but they tend to be quite active or interactive sessions. So there's a lot, you are expected to come prepared to classes, and you're expected to participate in your classes as well. So that means you have to do that advanced preparation before you are going to attend. So overall, the program is going to give you, you know, some specific business and management knowledge through all of those modules that I showed you. But also you're going to develop communication skills, because you're going to be doing so many different types of assessments and being exposed to different types of teaching. So you'll have to underdo research for most of your assignments, and then you'll be doing those specific research modules in years 3 and 4. You'll undertake presentations throughout the program, whether those be just minor things in class or more formal assessed pieces. You'll have to, you know, start to develop your ability to source information, to evaluate information. You'll be definitely developing your critical thinking and your analytical thinking skills. And then particularly in years 3 and 4, developing really those strategic thinking skills. How do you apply all of that knowledge that you're now learning, particularly through case studies and simulations that you'll be undertaking in your assessment. And I suppose a final point to say, when you do join UCD, you get to be part of a bigger community and all of the resources and services that UCD itself has. So we've got the Ucd Careers Network, which is something that our students tend to really enjoy. They have a one-to-one appointment service, so you can speak with a career and skills consultant. We bring our business one usually to you guys throughout the year, to specifically when you're going to be on campus or online. But you can also arrange separate appointments with them. They have a really great careers library. They have an employers database, so and loads of workshops and seminars that they run throughout the year. You've got the library with its vast amount of online resources as well. We've got all the medical and counselling services. And then notwithstanding the student societies and clubs, which all of our students, which are open to all of our students. And depending on how much free time you have on top of your work and your study, you might be able to avail of some of those as well as the sports centre once things reopen. So just as a final point in terms of how you apply to the programme. So applications are made directly through UCD. you have to create an account in advance. Once you created an account, the things that we do ask you for on your application is a copy of your CV and photo ID. And then there's an application fee of €50. Sometimes students struggle a little bit to find the course in the application. So there are some search options there for you. So make sure to pick on part-time programs, undergraduate certificates and diplomas, and then business, and you should be able to find our course. So that is more or less a run through of the program itself. And so what I thought I would do now, and if anyone has any questions, they can certainly throw them up into the chat box. But I thought I'd ask Matt a little bit about his own modules and how they run on the program. That's all right with you, Matt?
Yeah, that's fine, Kate. And thanks for this fantastic presentation. And welcome to you all. It's fantastic to see so many people being interested in our program. Yeah. So again, like, I'll be, I suppose, like, I'm actually delivering a few modules on this particular program in Quinn, in the Quinn School of Business in UCD. And yeah, please ask any questions you have.
Well, I'll kick off, Matt. Maybe if you just tell us a little bit about what modules it is that you teach, and maybe specifically the one that you teach for our diploma students.
Okay, excellent. So as I mentioned earlier on, like, for year 2 or stage 2 students, the DBS diploma students, I deliver a core module called Digital Business and Social Media Strategy. And then for our BBS or like final year students, I also take care of a brand new module called Strategic Decision Making in the Digital World, like, which is primarily dealing with topics like how do we make decisions, how can we actually use data available to us in our daily decision-making process, if that makes sense. But let me briefly talk about the Digital Business and Social Media Strategy module, which is an applied module. And you mentioned a few times during your introduction that we offer applied knowledge, and it's you guys, like, like the BBS part-time students have the huge advantage to bring a vast amount of work experience back to college. Okay, and again, just like taking like the whole thing a few steps back, talking about, say, my own like teaching philosophy, like, like I believe that business education as such is not only about going to classes, studying chapter after chapter after chapter, week after week after week, because that's simply not enough to become, like, a successful business leader. All right, so although you have to go and study, like, your theoretical frameworks and so on in class, we actually focus on the applied end of education, like, allowing you to apply theoretical knowledge to praxis. And that's exactly what I do in my Digital Business and Social Media Strategy module, requiring students to actually develop a substantial digital business and social media strategy for an organization, present that particular strategy to the organization and to the class, and then to, I suppose, like, to spice it up a bit, like, we actually have, like, a so-called like a mini research expo and competition running, where students, like, using this peer review process, like, where students will actually vote for the best and most convincing, as opposed, like, digital business strategy developed, like, so it's good fun as well, like, what we do. Also, like you mentioned, simulations. I actually incorporate several, in addition to our case studies, several online business simulations into my modules, allowing, again, students to play or to experience working in a real social media, in that particular example, like, business environment, like, making strategic decisions, and to see what the outcome would be based on that particular strategy they have actually implemented. And then students reflect and play the same simulation again, maybe implementing a different strategy, so they can actually then see, like, what strategy would actually be the most appropriate one. And finally, we actually try to incorporate or kind of like merge and or kind of regard our modules not as standalone modules, but like to actually work together. So whatever students actually learn, for example, in project management or business environment or even like accounting or whatever it may be, can actually be incorporated in my module as well. Like, so if that makes sense. So it's a whole holistic approach of yeah, like a holistic approach we actually implement, if that makes sense.
It does.
Good.
I suppose, how do students do well on one of your modules?
Well, that's a good question. Next question. No, no, they usually do actually well. They do exceptionally well, because I ask students to, number one, focus on learning, not remembering. So what does it mean? It means like, that I want students to see the big picture, not only chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. That's the learning part or the remembering part. The learning part, again, entails to implement the knowledge, to be able to act, or to be able to actually act as an innovator, as an entrepreneur, and actually bring all of the work experience back into college. Okay, so it's simply remembering or simply studying and regurgitating like PowerPoint content and so on, like it doesn't get you anywhere. So you have to actually again see the big picture in terms of like again focusing on learning, not remembering. And that, for example, like in my module and many other modules as well, we don't have a written examination. I don't believe in written examinations. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that here, but there are much better ways of actually examining and evaluating students. And one simple question, like I always ask students, do you remember one question you had to answer, and it's probably like a long time ago for many of you guys, you had to answer as part of your leaving cert or any kind of like state exam? And the answer is probably no. But on the other hand, if I ask you, do you remember one hands-on project or something you had to develop, something you had to implement, even like 5 or 10 years ago, you'll probably still remember, because that's what you've done, like the learning by doing approach. Yeah. So that's what I expect students to bring to classes, like, so their own experience, discussion, collaboration, and so on.
So what's it like for students when they come into a class with you, Matt? I guess it's not just sitting there and listening to you speak then.
No, definitely not. It's like I actually, again, as mentioned earlier on, incorporate like a more collaborative approach where, again, we like one part, maybe like half an hour, we discuss, or I introduce like, a theoretical framework or theoretical aspects of one particular content to students. Then we actually go into breakout rooms, and it doesn't matter if it's like, managed in a virtual environment, kind of like what we're doing right now, or back in the good old times, like in face-to-face classes, like, go out in little, like in small groups of 2, 3, 4, 5, or like 2, 3, or 4 students, and maybe for half an hour, work on something, play a simulation, discuss a case study, then come back to class and actually discuss certain aspects of that framework, like for example, how should what companies consider, management consider, while incorporating or while implementing, say, an Instagram or YouTube page or Facebook page or whatever, like for the organization. Okay, so maybe, and again, students go and talk about their own experience. Okay, and that's like, the learning from each other approach, which works much better and is much more effective than listening to me for 2 hours or 4 hours or 8 hours. It doesn't really matter, like, so